2025 meeting of the Fitchburg Historical Commission. I now will call this meeting to order. Please be advised that FATV is conducting an audio and video recording of this meeting for public broadcast. I ask anyone else in the audience who is recording this meeting to please identify themselves for record now by standing and state your name and city of residence. Seeing none? Okay, thanks. At this time, I ask that all electronic devices be placed into silent mode, and I'll try to do that with my own. This time, I'd like to have do a roll call, and I believe we have all of our members here. If you'll reply present. Mary Self?
Present.
Ellen DiGeronimo?
Present.
Andy Lepasti?
Present.
Don Ostrowski?
Present.
And Charles Sternamalo. Charles is joining us on video. And Charles, you still there?
I'm here.
Okay. We have a quorum, and we will move forward.
All right. Okay. You can stand up, buddy. Yeah, thanks. Bye, Terry.
Okay, thank you. Invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak, or please approach the podium, identify yourself by name and address, and identify the agenda item on which you would like to speak, and then you may speak on it for no more than 2 minutes. So the first item on our agenda is public comment. And do we have any guests who would like to speak? I see we have 3 guests. Do you have any comments to make here in the audience?
I do not. I'm just here.
Okay, very good. Also see that we have 2 guests who are participating remotely. If either of you would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand and I will allow that. Seeing none, we do have one statement that was emailed to me. This is from Lynn and David Nemi on 93 Prospect Street. And to quote their comment, we would like to formally express our opposition to the creation of a historic district in our neighborhood. That's the end of their statement. Hearing no other public comment, people would like to have a public comment. Let's move on to item number 2 on our agenda. Item number 2, review and approve minutes of the January 30th, 2025 meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve minutes as presented. Excuse me.
There's a revision.
Okay.
Or revision.
We made a
proposed.
moment to approve, and is there a second to the motion? And we'll have a discussion. Or
The motion be as amended? Is that
okay.
correct?
In the minutes, I had emailed the members of the commission a slight change to item number 3 on the minutes, and I guess motion to approve as suggested amendment as amended, and I don't know if there were any other comments or amendments proposed.
I apologize for not including that.
That's all right.
That's fine. Approve as amended.
And a second.
Second.
I second.
Mary.
Okay. All in favor say aye, and we'll do a roll call vote. Charles, say aye if you approve. He gave the,
Aye.
okay. Andy?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Ellen?
Aye.
Keith? Aye. As approved.
Okay.
Being the beginning of the year, our item 3 is looking at goals for this year's commission for 2025, and just kind of reviewing or taking a moment to think about some things that we would like to accomplish this year, and is things that we can focus on. And I'm wondering if anyone has any thoughts on things we think we would like to kind of focus on this year. We've had many projects kind of ongoing for a while. We did some, I think, some pretty good things last year with the May Preservation Month meeting. I think we kind of the end of last year, I think we had, was when we reviewed the library project as Monument Park. And the library is now under construction.
And also the brochure, you know, we,
Yes, and the Downtown Historic Areas brochure that we have copies of here, and I see we should probably put some copies out on the front table of the legislative building here also. Any other thoughts of what we might want to focus on this year?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Ellen?
I thank you for sharing the information about the park building, which for the natives was where Worcester North Savings Bank was for years, and also the School Street School. I would like very much for us to proceed in working towards their being accepted as individual buildings.
Yeah, I think that's certainly one of the items that you had brought before the commission probably a few years ago about being able to maybe communicate more to the public and to property owners. In this case, particularly focusing on downtown and providing a way for property owners in downtown and the public at large in downtown of a lot of the exceptional heritage and history of Fitchburg that we have in individual buildings and sites in our downtown area, not just Main Street, but kind of parallel streets and perpendicular streets in this particular area that I know the city is continuously focusing on trying to make this certainly a more livable and kind of multifunctional downtown area. We have lots of great infrastructure. It's developed over the last many years. We have commuter rail. We have an intermodal terminal. We have a lot of potential in buildings that are partially used or partially vacant, if you will, that have a lot of heritage to them. And we're seeing a lot of great progress along this line, particularly along Main Street, where property owners are seeing the potential, and the city through the mayor and planning and development have worked very hard to help these projects kind of move along. We're certainly getting a lot more housing, a lot more people downtown in this process. And kind of your suggestion probably a couple years ago was how can we create and help educate the public and property owners of these. And we've come up with a kind of a draft copy with individual addresses in the downtown area, showing existing photographs of a property, and then historic photographs of that same property, a kind of a listing of perhaps when the original building was built, and any other background information of a kind of a quick history that we can get from previous surveys and help from the Historical Society, kind of giving kind of a background history of these particular properties. Also listing what the zoning designation of that particular property is, so that the property owners or new purchasers of the property can understand what is available, what options zoning has for that particular property. And the city's zoning has come a long way in the past many years in encouraging multi-use development and residential living downtown and lots of other pieces. So references to that. Also references to various resources. So we have a couple draft copies of a few properties, kind of on a little bit on either ends of Main Street. One was the Park Building, or the old Santander Building most recently. And at the other end of Main Street, the School Street School, which is part of the proposed Upper Common Historic District that is happening right now, too. So, you know, from Moran Square to the School Street School and perhaps beyond, there are, made a rough guess, probably to 50 to 100 wonderful older properties along this stretch that certainly have a lot of potential, particularly encouraging retaining as much of the original architecture as they can, and when renovations are made, to think of keeping a lot of the original character to the buildings. So it's really an education process, and letting people know. You'd be astounded some of the history that we can find of buildings like that. So certainly one of the things I'd like to include, and this year, is to work on getting a lot of that information out, property by property.
I think that would be wonderful.
And including it in a database. We've shared these, a couple drafts of what these look like with the mayor's office and community development, and actually a redevelopment authority also. And we've had a lot of positive comments. This is in draft form now. We're going to try to make it a little bit more readable and compact and flashy, if you will, and be able to share this with the local realtors, et cetera, and perhaps an online database that anyone can click on and find the address and find the history of their building quickly. And then there's other resources. A lot of these buildings have historic surveys that have been done starting back in the 1970s, kind of moving forward, and links to be able to see those original survey documents, et cetera, also links to see if they're in any National Register historic districts, particularly for commercial buildings, may be able to take advantage of both state and federal income tax credits for approved type of renovations. And it does include a lot of new work happening on the building also, with trying to keep the exterior in a historic manner. But projects like the Syndicate building just off of Moran Square, the multi-apartment project there, it included the old fire station down off of Moran Square. That's an example of retaining the old furniture building, Tar Box, and then Harper Furniture, and before that, that was the Brown Bag Filling Company building, where local inventor created lots of nationally used machine for putting seeds in packets, if you will. So lots of great history, and things like that make owners, not knowing these, make them appreciate the value of these properties, perhaps, and all of us appreciate some of the history behind these. So any other thoughts on priorities that we might want?
You know, on the Syndicate building, is it going to be renovated for apartments? I know there's signs on the bottom, like storefront available, maybe.
Yeah, I believe obviously the interior spaces were part of the major renovation. I think it has all new fire alarm and sprinklers and so forth in it, so I believe it is ready for use. And I think it's still waiting to find the tenants to occupy those spaces, to my knowledge anyhow. So.
Right. I don't know, for a project to just track some of the preservation projects in town, like that building, and
Yep.
even Fitchburg Theater and the Ivor Mills on River Street.
Yep. Kind of ongoing project we reviewed a little bit last meeting, but things like the Ivor Johnson, originally the Haywood Furniture Manufacturing Complex, those multiple manufacturing buildings off of River Street, pretty much across from the old cooperative farm elevator complex off of the railroad there, off the big vacant parking lot now where the plaza is now missing from that side. But that is moving forward as a preservation project for housing. I've heard from the owners that they're hoping to maybe start interior demo and some construction this spring if things go well.
That's the Syndicate building?
The Ivor Johnson works.
Oh, Ivor Johnson, yes.
I've also just received several correspondence, or the commission has just received several correspondence from Mass Historical Commission, where they're doing the final review of the Academy Street Educational District that includes the B.F. Brown Building, the stables, and the Academy Street School, where it is getting its final Mass Historical approval to be then forwarded on to the National Register of Historic Places, so that historic district, and in particular those three major buildings that are being renovated to meet National Park Service standards for, I believe it's 56 units of housing and gallery space, workshops, space, et cetera. Yes. So that is in the works, and a very positive piece. I know they have signs up for rental of those buildings because they're nearing completion very soon. So great success stories kind of on either ends of Main Street, the Syndicate building and the B.F. Brown projects. And as the River Street project is moving forward, that's another one. So keeping tabs on those and helping to, again, educate the public of the importance of the history surrounding those and the great heritage that's being preserved in those projects.
Excuse me, Keith, just as just to add a little interest, my grandfather, I just found out, my mother's father, worked at the Haywood Company before he moved to Gardner. He came from Ireland, and he worked at the Haywood Company, and I remember saying to one of my cousins, well, where was it? And she said River Street, and she said something, and I said, oh, that must have been what Ivor Johnson's was originally, and of course I did find out. But also, I was a student at B.F. Brown when it was a junior high school. Did you go there?
Yes.
And I can remember saying, who is B.F. Brown? You know, who's the person that the school is named after? And nobody seemed to know. So when I was doing some preliminary research on the properties in Moran Square, lo and behold, B.F. Brown had a brother John, and they are the two people. Benjamin and John are the inventors of the seed patent, the seed filling
Machine.
machine. And I think it's wonderful. And I'm getting ready to send a notice to my classmates, because I usually pull together a meeting once in a while. And so I'm going to share that information with them. But I think it's wonderful. And when I ever found out that my grandfather worked at the Haywood Company before it was owned by Abbott Johnson, yeah.
Yeah, so those are examples of.
Oh, and one other thing, I don't know if you know, but we had a beautiful building, the Johnsonia building, which is now a vacant lot at the corner of Putnam and Main Street. And I found out that when Mr. Johnson passed away, his wife had that building created in his memory, to honor him. And I never knew that before either. And the Fitchburg State College president's house on Highland Avenue was their residence.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Many marks on the city.
Yeah, no,
Yes,
it's.
yeah. There's lots of connection to these projects, just beyond the buildings, but a lot of interesting history and people that were important to Fitchburg, and many, many workers, and the many different cultures of immigrants that came to Fitchburg to help work in the factories and then became entrepreneurs themselves and helped create the rich heritage that the city has. And moving forwards, we're making history every day. I think one thing that we did last year was meeting about, in May, we celebrated Preservation Month, which is kind of a national, designated Preservation Month nationally. And we had like about an hour-long program that kind of celebrated that, and we announced the release of the brochure we made of the downtown Fitchburg historic areas that kind of maps out multiple historic areas from Moran Square all the way up through the Upper Common, including several of the project areas we talked about just the last few minutes. I'm thinking it would be good to, again, do something in May and kind of focus on certainly educating Fitchburg residents and beyond about the heritage that we have in the city. And in the past, going back a few years, the city has hosted we're City Historical Society, and the city hosted walking tours of downtown Fitchburg, and perhaps late springtime in May, maybe we could think about during our next meeting or so, as a suggestion anyhow, is to perhaps organize some of those again, maybe in cooperation with the Historical Society. Obviously, they're the public nonprofit that many of us are members with also, and a lot of the people in the city are members of the Historical Society, but maybe partnering with them or on our own, perhaps organizing some nice fair weather, thinking about spring, that it would be great to be able to have some groups of looking at different parts of Main Street and perhaps the whole length. It's about a mile-long walk, but so we could maybe divide it up in different sections on different days, perhaps. And we have lots of great authorities that can help chip in on some of the interesting information and about the history of the buildings, architectural styles, some of the interesting people that are involved with various properties or even vacant properties that we see along our downtown area. So these have been fun in the past, and lots of getting the neighborhood out, and perhaps some of the new residents that are starting to move into downtown apartments, et cetera. Maybe it would be a fun piece to help welcome new people in the city.
Could we arrange to have the machine that you need to show us a slide presentation here? Can we arrange to have, I'll have to find it. I have a carousel.
Yep.
I'm laughing at myself. I used to work at the Park Building for Worcester North. And one day I got a telephone call from Bill McSheehy, who was teaching at the Walnut Street School, and he asked me if I would take some of his students on a walking tour. So I said, well, I think it falls under the job description, but I'll have to talk to the president, and I'll get back to you. And I'll need a couple of weeks to spend a little time at the Historical Society. Well, anyway, it came to pass. But what I will never forget, as long as I live in, and I can remember how thrilled I was, there was a little boy in the class who we started, the kids came through the underpass that ends right by Riverfront Park. Do you know what I mean?
The old underpass.
The old underpass, South Street. Anyway, we started there, and I told them that the area was where the Fitchburg men gathered in this particular area, and they went off to fight in the Revolutionary War. And so that,
Got there late.
But they didn't get there in time, which I didn't know at that time, but I did. Well, anyway, we started, and we went up on the opposite side of the street. And when we got to Monument Park, I was pointing out the buildings, and we're looking at the senior center, which was called the Armory in those days. And this little boy, Billy, said, Mrs. D, why didn't they do a better job when they eliminated a window and made a door on the second floor at the Armory? You know what I mean?
Yep, right on the balcony over
There were two long windows, and one of them, at some point, they decided to have a door coming out to that little portico. And I was so thrilled that he saw that and wanted to know why they didn't just do a better job. Well, then the other thing that was interesting, by the time we started down the other side of Main Street, one of the kids hollered out and said, Mrs. D, there's another gargoyle. I had pointed out gargoyles.
Yes.
And it was, honest and truly, it was just wonderful. So anyway, that developed into other things. I promise you I won't get into it here. But I have a carousel with the buildings that I used to
That'd be interesting to see.
that I used to use as part of my, I mean, I didn't show the carousel, but those were the buildings that I would point out when I was doing walking tours.
That'll be a good guide for us.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, we could look into getting the slides digitized so that they could go into a PowerPoint presentation.
Yep.
Okay. Well,
Move the technology along.
if we could show them next month.
good. We'll help you dig those out. And
Yeah, I'll say a prayer that I find them.
Okay.
What year were those photos from, Ellen? Do you recall?
Oh, it was a long time ago.
A while ago?
I'd have to try to think of the years that I worked at Worcester North, because that's when I started doing that. And
Great. Any other thoughts for goals for?
Well, I think the walking tour is an excellent idea, and it fits in with our idea of, or our goal of educating the public, because, as we know, Fitchburg is a city that's rich in history. However, it could be better known, let's put it that way. And I think doing a walking tour would be part of our educational.
Yep. And
we could, if we could, well, there isn't a building there, but, I mean, to use, I was thinking of the library. Maybe we could start the meeting here, and then just take people down and take them around the Monument Park Historic District.
yeah, and we might break it up into a couple different areas. It's a long walk from one end to the other, so we could have Upper Common, we could have Monument Park Central area, and, Moran Square up, or even farther down Lunenburg and Summer Street, coming up in pieces. So having those might be something that FATV could join us on or something and be able to broadcast to for those that, just a suggestion. But, thinking of how we can push, if people can't make it, they can see it remotely, various ways that we can do some good outreach as to kind of help our charter, basically, to help preserve the heritage of the city as the historical commission. So just understanding is kind of a lot of that. So
That's a good idea about FATV, if we can get FATV involved, because I'm finding that because of the ice and snow, frozen snow, people are not able to get out as much.
That's true.
So we wind up viewing things on FATV, among other.
Yeah.
But things that appeared months ago on FATV, they call up.
Yeah.
They're able to call up.
yeah,
and watch.
it's a great resource, and kind of using all of those city resources to kind of help get the word out.
That's right.
Not just pieces of paper that we push around.
So, yeah, it's more than, it would be more than just the people who are walking on the tour,
Sure.
but it would be documented,
Yeah.
available to people.
But just what reminded me, been able to, on our Fitchburg Historical Commission website, which is part of the city's multiple websites for the various commissions and organizations and stuff within the city government, we've been able to update our website to include the FATV recording of our May event that we had. It also includes references of how to perhaps look up the history of your own property by going to the Massachusetts Resource Information System, or the MACRIS list. So on our website, we have the link to be able to go to the MACRIS maps, where you basically type in an address if it's your house, putting in your street address and city, and you click on it, and it pops right up and shows that information, that's the knowledge of your particular property, if it's been surveyed. And there are over 900 historic surveys of properties and sites within the city of Fitchburg. So a lot of work has been done over the years in historic surveys. So there's a link there on, again, if Fitchburg Historical Commission's website. Also a link to get historic markers for your property if you want. There's also links to preservation techniques if you're thinking about, if you have an older building and if you're thinking about doing repairs, primarily to the exterior, but some of the interior things also. If you're thinking about doing repairs or needed to do a replacement of an item on your older building, there's a link there to the preservation briefs, which is a series of 40 or 100 or whatever preservation briefs that focus on, if you have slate roof, you can check on the slate roofing. If you're flashing, if it's wood, exterior wood or clapboards, things you can do to help restore and preserve it, preservation of older windows, preservation of brownstone and granite, all types of things. You just open it up and probably, do a Control F find, and you put in whatever your topic is, and you'll probably pop up.
Oh, that's interesting.
So these are researched over the last 50 years of research through the National Park Service of kind of best practices of, more tried and true ways of preserving your property. So this is a very valuable piece. I like to look at it, but, just for the public to know how to, something happens on your house and you want to fix it, here's a place to go. Here's the best ways to do it. We've been finding out. There's also a link to the Downtown Historic Areas brochure, the PDF copy of that. And hopefully over time we can be adding more things like videos of tours and other information about like the downtown database of historic buildings, things like that, that we can add to. So just Google Fitchburg Historical Commission, you'll get the link to that. So, we should move along. We're going to be finishing up in about 20 minutes. So if I may move on to item number 4.
Hey, Keith, before you do that, can I just say one thing?
Sure.
You might have mentioned it already. I'm at work, so I might have missed it if you said it. Does the Historical Commission have any say on getting the Form Bs updated? Remember we were talking about that with some of the residents from the proposed Prospect Hill Historic District. There were some properties that weren't on the Form Bs. Is that something that we'd have any input on, or is that something that goes through the city council?
About possible historic districts or about?
No, about personal properties that aren't listed.
Doing additional historic survey work.
Yeah, that, and then also maybe updating existing ones that are outdated. Both.
I think that would be a good thing to put on our projects list for this 2025 also, is kind of looking into, it would take, how we update those and getting the responsible person or consultant that we could use to either fill in gaps or to update those. And some of that we could do there ourselves if it were some minor pieces to it, but putting in amendments to those survey forms, I think is your question.
Yeah, and then, when John Chittick did it back in the late 70s, I don't know if that went through the city, if somebody was paid to do that, who did the research, that kind of thing. So yeah, we could talk about it. I know we're short on time today, but we can talk about it at another meeting.
Yep. Well, let's put that on our goals. Yep. And carry on this. We'll see if we can find out some information by next meeting on that.
Yeah, and some of the people that were at our last meeting even had information, and they were excited to see about updating their Form Bs.
I know I am, because there's misinformation on the present Form B about.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, yeah.
Yeah. Great. You have a property in that area too. As many of you have perhaps older buildings.
Thanks, Keith.
Great. Thanks, Charles. Anyhow, do you have other ideas, commission members? You want to email those to the group also, and we can continue this thought and be able to discuss it in more detail in March. Moving on to item number 4, preservation of historic stone walls and stone structures. Charles had kind of brought this up where there quite often in the city where properties are being changed or renovated or expanded, or somebody wants to put in a parking area, or however they might be making changes, that older stone wall type of structures that are prolific, particularly in Fitchburg, because of the hilly terrain that the city has, and also because we had this great source of granite and somewhat some of it made into very detailed shapes of granite, and a lot of it made into with single faces and many of the stone walls and retaining walls that we see in the city. And question coming up, when projects come forward, of being able to, one, educate the public and property owners on the kind of the unique quality of this is to Fitchburg and kind of the New England area in general, that these stone structures, if you will, be they retaining walls that we see holding up many of the front yards and side yards along the streetways throughout Fitchburg, probably thousands of granite foundations that came from the rollstone quarry of the buildings, including City Hall next door here, that I'm sure was quarried from the rollstone quarry up on the hill. And being able to share this information, not just us, the Historical Commission, say, I wish somebody had saved that wall, but making it of more public interest, perhaps guidelines of some sort that the city might try to follow as either fully enforced or as recommendations, and entities such as the Planning Board and the Building Commissioner's Office having some guidance, and either through suggestion or through something, looking at options before a stone wall is dismantled or removed or just kind of bulldozed or whatever. If you need to put a driveway entrance in, that you finish off the wall where you can make change, but being respectful of what we have. A lot of these dry laid stone walls, and I like to look at if you look at the B.F. Brown project and back where the Academy stables or the city stable building is, and just to your right as you're looking at the front of the city stable is High Street going up as it goes up to meet with Mechanic Street. And that stone wall there, which is almost straight vertical, is probably 40 feet high at some places. It is, and it's, the granite blocks in there were hand laid, with simple machinery, more gin poles and oxen or or horses or whatever pulling up pulleys to move stones from a big pile and being, placed in place in these not, in place by very skilled masons of the day. And we see them all over the city, in nearly every section of the city. And as we get into rural areas, we see the stone walls from the 19th and early 20th century, maybe some even before then, of the hand-laid field stone walls in field dividing lines, sometimes property lines of properties and things like that, which again are part of New England heritage and certainly part of Fitchburg heritage. And ways to, one, educate of how we can preserve these, as a city recognizing kind of the importance of our identity. You go to Leominster, you don't see walls like that. If you go to other towns around us, you see the fieldstone walls and things, but you don't see the massive granite retaining wall structures that hold up our railroads, or the railroad bridges, or the bridges crossing the rivers. Just look at kind of Laurel Street extension here as it comes in and meets Water Street. If you view that bridge from Boulder Drive with its multiple arched openings in it, just amazing piece of masonry work. Huge, amount. So kind of following up on your, Charles, any thoughts on how we should approach this?
No, but I was just curious about that particular stone wall in front of the former Our Father's House building that someone had sent us an email. I believe it was Jacqueline Wetge, and that there was a proposal to alter or remove it, and I don't really know what the story is there. Is that by any chance in the Moran Square Historic District? I don't think it is.
No.
No, it's not. But
I don't know what the.
How do we approach something like this? How do we educate, or through the city and the various agencies in a governmental way? Is there a way that we can regulate that? I know that over the past several years, Don has helped review what other communities in Massachusetts have done as far as educating their particular municipality. Some cities have come up with stone wall types of ordinances. Most of those refer to field stone wall structures and trying to, where possible, certainly not allowing change to happen, but ways of making change to maybe just a portion of the wall instead of bulldozing it all, or selling it off to somebody else that wants to build another stone wall. And that piece of heritage of that particular property and the city of Fitchburg in itself is kind of lost forever. So is there a process of educating and, where possible and practical, maintaining these pieces of our heritage through, minor work of preserving, as much of the walls or the structure as we can, still allowing change if you need to have access into a vacant piece of property that has a stone retaining wall in front of it, certainly allowing the stone to be removed there, but repairing the ends and make it as wide as the driveway needs to be, not restricting the use of it, but trying to dampen the effect of total removal or whatever. I guess we're looking for any in our audiences that that have thoughts on us to get back to us on it. We would like some support in either creating guidelines through education and guidelines to perhaps planning board, et cetera, to use their discretion, or as some communities have, actually create an ordinance that gives the kind of the tools for reviewing removal or changes to stone structures within our city. And, not prohibiting, but, allowing in cases where it has to happen as a hardship, but certainly kind of following other rules and regulations, such as our zoning and, driveway entrance. We all live with various rules and regulations as we live in a civil society, and as part of our goal of preserving our city's heritage, and I think, as Charles was saying, we think these are important pieces of our city that once they're gone, they're gone, and just the stopping and thinking about it and looking at alternatives to it. So 6 minutes to go. We'll continue this discussion next meeting, and perhaps, Don, we can take another look at your Stonewall ordinance piece. And if anybody in the listening audience has any thoughts or comments, we'd be happy to hear from those. Connect to our city website, and you can communicate by email with us. Moving on to number 5, if we can. Well, let me see. We have just a few minutes left. We have updated proposed pedestrian layout of Moran Square. I think that's going to be coming back to us as a redesign. So, rather than too much discussion on that, I think wait till we see the redesign on that. Project to document and share Main Street building histories. We talked about that already as a continuation of our projects for this year, I think. Update on Monument Park repairs. This is specifically to the cast iron fencing. Ellen and I, Charles, you'll be interested in this. Ellen and I met with the city purchasing agent yesterday in looking at ways to be able to find some funding for the 2 phases of getting the cast iron fencing repaired. First is creating the preservation bid documents, if you will, by a qualified preservationist that understands old cast iron railing systems, so that it can be done in the proper, long-lasting manner. And Mary Delaney helped us look at a way that perhaps we can work on some funding or ways of getting funding, perhaps talking with some consultants that do similar work with the city here now, get some estimates what that first phase of the design work would be, get that into a bid document with some sort of estimate of what the final project would cost. So we'll get that first funding for the phase 1 design and bid documents, which should not be a lot of money, but perhaps using matching grant funds from Mass Historical, along with CDGB funding to do the other match or some other allocation from the city. Thank you. So that first, it looks like we're making a little progress on that, and we're going to see if we can get some initial estimates of what that first phase is. So it's still going to take multiple years to get this done, but getting the documents started and then finding out what the estimate of the final price would be and getting city backing to do that repair work. On a similar note, so that's moving ahead. On a similar note, the Parks Department, who was at our meeting, James was there at the meeting with us also, has procured park benches for Monument Park and some other parks through some grants that James was able to get. Thank you, James Barnell. And when weather permits, they'll be installing park benches back into Monument Park. You have to wait for unfreezing weather and put in some concrete spot foundations to hold the benches in place. So that's a good sign, and a little bit moving forward with that part of Monument Park. Update on historic building demolition delay. Just very quickly, we're working to review a draft of a demolition delay ordinance that we have revised many times over the years. Thank you, Don. And trying to get a meeting with our building commissioner and head of planning and development, and getting a meeting scheduled. We're hoping for within the next couple of weeks to get some feedback from both of them again. Review of process to study the creation of additional historic districts. Last meeting, we had met with several community members from the Prospect Hill area. Their questions about how historic districts work. We addressed many of, or some of those questions in our last meeting, and we're kind of waiting to see if we kind of move forward with any thoughts on that. We had some various comments from various people on that too. So other areas of the city could have historic districts in them also, so we're kind of reaching out to citizens of the community that might be interested in understanding more about what the different types are and how they operate and how they work. Many towns and cities in Massachusetts have local historic districts, similar to our Monument Park local historic district, and also lots of National Register historic districts, similar to what Fitchburg has. So these are tools that can be used for recognition and sometimes for some various control to help maintain specific heritage of our specific communities. New business? Any new business?
Well, it may not be new business, but I wondered about the signage project for putting up those signs on Main Street and elsewhere for the historic districts.
We have, that's a good question. Maybe put that into our goals for 2025. Okay. The way it looks, the monument, not monument, Moran Square, no, we're going past our time, National Register Historic District, along with the highway improvements that are being planned through the engineering companies that are working for the city, working at creating better traffic and pedestrian control at Moran Square, is also proposing to add signage to the lampposts throughout the area that's within the bounds of the Moran Square Local Historic District that goes partway up both Lunenburg and Summer Street and back this way on Main Street. So that could be some signage, and seeing how that works out, we should be able to see a review of that as they come back with their new design proposal. Okay. And then including it for the other historic areas up Main Street would be great. And we had some proposals on that along with the brochure, and the signage actually on the streets is something we'd like to do yet. So I think we've run out of time, so let's hold our new business till next meeting if we can. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Ellen
How about I
moved. A second?
I second.
Sorry.
1 second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Opposed? None? Thank you all for coming, attending, and hope to see you next month.